So often when you are scrolling through X or you're scrolling through Instagram or you're scrolling through YouTube, there are often times where you get people that are delivering information, but always have this sense that they need to add whatever they have to add to it. Today's guest is a person that literally stopped me in my tracks when I found him about a year ago and started following him when I got back on social media, in particular back on X or Twitter, then X, is Kagan Dunlap. And so what I love so much about what he does is that he delivers information in real time. He delivers it with a sense of this is the facts and allows you to decipher what you want to do. So what I thought we'd do today is, first off, Kagan, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you inviting me on. I'm happy to be here. I apologize it took so long for me to try to plan this out. I know it's kind of a pain in the butt dealing with scheduling and everything. I've been slammed, and then I've also recently moved. So I was trying to like sort my life out. So I appreciate you being patient with me while I was working through all that stuff.
Oh man, I would have waited for 10 years to get you on, man. There's certain people that I just come across that it hits me. I was like, man, the way that person is doing it is the way that it connects. And I just have so much appreciation for how you do what you do, man.
I appreciate that. That means a lot. Means a lot.
Okay. So the most recent things that you've been putting out, and I think actually it's you've been doing this for a long time, is the information that's coming out about Russia and Ukraine. In particular, the various new weapon systems in terms of drone warfare, anti-drone warfare. As you've been watching closely on this, the tactics that are emerging on both sides, whether you're talking, it's utilizing drones to a different degree, autonomous vehicles, or my favorite was you posted a video the other day of some guy getting in and one of his tires were off, and it was just, I think there's just, if you could give your assessment of what that conflict really looks like and where do you think it's evolving to next? And then, overall that, maybe we can, once we establish that, we'll talk about what you think about the negotiations and how the ratcheting up is going in terms of the drone warfare inside Russia, Russia's response the other day. What is your impression of where we're at in all those?
Yeah. Well, first, I would say first and foremost, I wouldn't consider myself an expert on probably anything, really. I just kind of like observe stuff, and I like to know what's going on, and I like seeing like the evolution of technology, especially when it pertains to conflict, because obviously the military is heavily involved in stuff around the world, and I like to be informed on what kind of technology is being used out there. I like to be able to share that information with other people who may find it interesting, who may encounter it based on whatever their job is, whether that be contractors that are independent of the military or active duty service members that may come in contact with it. And I think that this whole thing has been, I would say if I had to summarize this whole event, and this is just like completely divorced of like your opinions on the war and like how it started and like who's at fault. Obviously, Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. It's pretty cut and dry, pretty clear that Russia's the aggressor in this one, and Ukraine was invaded by a foreign nation. That's pretty just plain and simple. That's the way it is. But as far as like your opinions on it, like separate from that, this has been one of the biggest intelligence gathering events of probably my lifetime, for sure.
Agreed.
As far as just like, this is probably the most observed, most recorded, and most documented war in the history of the world, probably, I would say, just from like the sheer volume of ISR feeds that people have been able to watch, drone feeds that people have been able to watch, actual combat footage from GoPros that have been recording footage either from the Russian perspective or the Ukrainian perspective, or, the foreign volunteers that were part of the Ukrainian Foreign Legion's perspective. And there has been more videos and content and photos and documentation of just combat operations throughout the entire duration of this war since 2022's invasion than anything before. And so I think that while the war itself may be an absolute tragedy because there's been countless life lost on both sides, and that should be something that everybody should be like, hey, maybe this isn't good. We probably should find a way to, come to peace. And there's no prosperity being gained for the people of Russia or the people of Ukraine from constant death like this. But at the same time, like, it has been a massive intelligence gathering event because people from all over the planet have been gathering intelligence from this, like massive amounts of intelligence, not only on Russian operations and Russian tactics and Russian techniques and the way that they conduct themselves in battle and like what their kind of battle rhythm is and like what they like to do as far as like how things go from the beginning of an invasion to like kind of like where we're at right now. The type of tactics that have changed with drone warfare, the type of tactics that have changed with unmanned surface vessels, like the boats on the Black Sea and stuff like that, taking things out. There's been a lot of information that's been gathered from this. And then obviously like the information war with social media and everything else that's happening, like Telegram and TikTok and Twitter or X and everything else. Like, there's been videos and footage of this posted all over the place, and there's all kinds of narratives being pushed. You could have the same video and like 15 different narratives being pushed with that one video because it was getting shared by different accounts that are trying to share it from a different angle and all this other stuff. So I think if nothing else, this has definitely been a big information gathering thing for people on all sides, whether that be the United States or Russia or Ukraine or anyone else that's just sitting back on the sidelines watching this thing. And I think right now we're kind of obviously in a tenuous situation because I know that President Donald Trump has been trying to negotiate peace. And so is like his cabinet. They've been trying to get the Russian President Vladimir Putin to agree to a ceasefire and a peace agreement with Ukraine, and Ukraine's been trying to do a peace agreement. It's been all over the place. And then even just today, like I haven't even made a video about it, but apparently Vladimir Putin's helicopter was somewhere near the front at one point and it came under massive drone attack. And now they're using that event as they're framing it as a potential assassination attempt. And this just came out today. I've seen this trending already. And like, that's obviously going to have an impact on negotiations now, like they already see like Russia already seems like they don't really care whether they seem really like apathetic towards having peace. Like it almost seems like an apathy towards peace, which is weird. And I don't know if that's the Russian people. I think that's just the Russian leadership seems to be apathetic towards peace. I
agree.
And I don't know if that's because like their economy is dependent on the war economy, and if they stop, that they're gonna like their economy is gonna collapse, or if maybe they don't trust the United States in the negotiation process, or if they don't trust Ukraine enough to follow through on their word. Like I don't know what's happening that's causing this to take so long to resolve. I do know that it's going to be obviously very complicated brokering peace between two nations who've been fighting for. We're going on 3 years now, a little over 3 years. Obviously a hard thing to do. I don't even know where you would start. Like, I'm not a geopolitical expert. I'm not sure how they would even broker this stuff, but obviously there's a lot of, animosity between the two nations, and it just keeps getting kicked down the road. So I don't know how they're going to do it, but I hope they can manage it. I would like to see peace for all the people of both those countries. I think we should get to a place where war is no longer. The unfortunate thing is war is very lucrative for a lot of people. Right. And until it gets to a point where it's no longer as lucrative for those nations, like it's going to keep happening, So I don't know. I think maybe we need to figure out a way to like, maybe we just like make robots fight and use that as a means to generate wealth, like the Colosseum. But this way you're not it's not at the expense of human life. maybe that's a way that the defense industrial complex could still make their money. And then like, it'd be like an entertainment thing, but nobody would actually be perishing. Like, and it wouldn't, hurt anybody. I don't know. I mean, this
is genius.
I don't know. I mean, somebody's going to hear this and be like, I could make a lot of money doing that. It'd be like, battle bots or something like that.
But for adults, for the military, that's right. No, as a person that's, was involved from the GWAD from, my first combat deployment was summer 2002. My last was with the agency in 2011. Oh, wow. There was a massive evolution of technology for sure, but it seemed to be very one-sided. Like it was us making the advancements. It was us that were really, I mean, obviously I was never in Iraq, and all my buddies that were over there, they started facing, the VBIDs that were a lot more technically proficient with how they crafted them in terms of their ability to penetrate through their MRAPs and just the sophistication advanced. But now, you've got, I saw a report, I think you posted it, that they're going to build something like 4 million drones over the next, year or so. They're going to ramp up their production, right? Mm. And then on top of that, you also have, China feeding their drone manufacturing, Iran's drone manufacturing. They're feeding the Houthis. So it almost feels like, because of this lower end technology that delivers even a more capability. I also saw heard in the number that you said that 70% of all casualties were a result of drone warfare in some capacity.
Yeah. And that's just from like using open source. Like I don't personally know if that's the case, but I've been seeing a lot of open sources and a lot of like reporting that saying that it could be upwards of 70% of casualties or destroyed vehicles were as a result of drones, which is nuts because, that was, I mean, it's not like new because I mean, we had, jihadists and stuff like that using drones back in, when we were still in Afghanistan and Syria and Iraq and stuff like that. I think around 2016, 17, they were starting to do that stuff, but it's like blown way, way up since this conflict started,
and for me, it, cause obviously, I mean, even after Benghazi's when I really, kind of understood the massive in terms of American arms sales, how we do those arms sales, whether they're overt or covert. Yeah. You start to realize, all right, there's this whole undercurrent of technology and then distribution across channels. Now, they're all the players that our military has to face around the world it seems like they've exponentially gotten bigger. So in what you're seeing in this reporting, this open source stuff that you're always on top of, how many different nations do you think are producing quality munitions and weapon systems that are contributing not just to Ukraine and Russia, but to Syria, to Lebanon, to Israel, the Houthis out of Yemen? I mean, is it just exploding on a way that becomes uncontrollable? What's up, everybody? Sorry again for the interruption. I just want to tell you about this incredible 5-day challenge that we're offering on davidrutherford.com or in the link in the description. And what this is this is your Embrace Fear 5-day challenge. Now, over the past 30 years, I've spent a tremendous amount of time developing what I call the frog logic concepts. I teach people to embrace their fears, to forge their self-confidence, how to live a team life, and to ultimately live with purpose. So what we want to introduce you to is how to get going in these ideas. And so we've got this incredible 5-day Embrace Fear challenge. Again, the link is in the description. In this, there's 5 missions, 1 per day, that's going to ask you to do all different types of things, which is Identify the fears which are running your life, accept the hard truth of where you are, retrain your mindset to test your limits, and then to forge your courage to live with purpose. These involve both physical and emotional and mental aspects in terms of journaling. But I'm telling you, it's going to kickstart your mind as you begin to think about the number one emotion out of our 8 core emotions that impedes us from our successes, and that's fear. And trust me when I tell you, I've spent a lot of my life being afraid of things. When you're jumping out of a perfectly good airplane in the middle of the night, chasing 2 ducks into the middle of the ocean, you better believe you're scared. And this is the ideas that emerged out of my understanding of fear that I hope you can understand too, that will end up helping you be able to find your purpose in life. So here's the kicker. This is a free challenge. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to download anything. All you got to do is sign up, take the challenge, and get your life back on track, being able to embrace that fear in order for you to find purpose in life. All right, enjoy. Hoo-yah. Is it just exploding on a way that becomes uncontrollable?
I think that it's tough because there's so many different nations that are producing armaments. And then, of course, we're selling armaments through foreign military sales and stuff like that to different nations. Like, for example, I think on May 22nd, the State Department released an approval of possible foreign military sale of $296 million in Javelin missile systems and related equipment to Estonia, which is obviously a former Soviet bloc nation. Estonia is our ally. Let's be clear about that.
Yep.
Like
Very clear.
I've worked like with the Estonians before.
Oh wow, cool.
And not directly, but like they were. I was in CENTCOM in 2023. And they were part of the defense force for the base that I was on at the time. And I met a bunch of those guys. They were all super nice. And they were all staying in post. Like they're doing their job like everybody else. But they're like one of our allies for sure. They're a big partner for us. And
we had them all through Afghanistan back in the day. They would always be like on these little bases. The Estonians would do like gate guard detail and all that.
Yeah.
They just get they're doing it all. And they're I'll never forget, they showed up one time and they were wearing like rubber, like hunting boots, like rubber duck boots, Oh
no.
And dude, we felt so bad. And it was the Brits, the British SAS. They said, hey man, here's some boots. And they gave them like badass boots and stuff. And they were like, they couldn't have been cool. Like the level of commitment from them just went through the roof. Cause they're like, oh, that's cool. So yeah.
Yeah, they were always, I mean, I had nothing but good interactions with all the Estonians and, but again, it's like, you've got a lot of different nations that some of them manufacture weapons, some of them don't. And they're like, everybody's trading with each other and trying to sell each other stuff. And like people are wanting to buy stuff. Like, you see nations that have, F-16s and like F-15s and F-18s and F-35s that they purchased from the United States that may have had certain key technology removed from it before they purchased it. And then they added their own proprietary stuff. They just have like the basic airframe. It's like, hey, I'd like to buy your souped up Honda Civic. And then they buy it. We take all the souped up stuff out and then they take it and then they soup it up themselves because they're like, I really like that frame and the things that it does. But it is a weird thing because it's not something I really knew much about for the longest time. I didn't realize that we sold like our older equipment or sold like our frames to people or sold our tanks to people or sold our like Humvees or whatever other vehicles. Like, I mean, I've never seen combat footage of Bradleys before this came out. And then like the war in Ukraine, you've seen like Bradleys taking on T-90 tanks and stuff like that. Like I remember that was one of the most viral videos ever. I think back in 2020, I might've been 22 or 23.
It was 22.
Yeah. And there was like 2 Bradleys facing off against one T-90 and it was getting hit so hard by the Bushmaster chain guns that it just couldn't do anything. I mean, it was just like, all their systems got fried from this thing. And I can't even imagine like how terrifying that would be to be getting attacked by two Bradleys inside while you're inside of that thing. Wild to see, but yeah, I think, really at this point, when it comes to like arms sales and, things like that, the world is so intertwined with just how connected we all are, like militarily and GDP and like all this other stuff. Cause like, I'm not an economics guy. I don't really know a lot about like global economics or global currencies or things like that, or sales across the ocean. But, there's definitely a lot of, give and take going on between nations, whether they need it for themselves or if they're just trying to buy it and then sell it off to somebody else at a higher rate. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like probably a lot of that going on too. Just like how a lot of scalpers like to buy things and then sell them for a higher rate. I would imagine the same thing happens with weapons. It's just humans trying to make a buck. You know what I mean?
And it all just kind of goes back to that, doesn't it? Right. I mean, there are people that prey on conflicts no matter what to make those dollars for sure. Yeah. One of the funniest things that you posted never funny, but I think remarkable aspects of the basic human condition was the video you posted about the Ladies of the Night video in Ukraine and how much they're making on the front lines and how that's come about. And I think that's more indicative as to these black economies that evolve, right? These black market economies that seem to emerge through combat engagements. And I found that fascinating. As you're assessing your open source, the places that you're pulling information from, is there a process of how you filter all this, or are you simply just looking for something that really is kind of unique and fascinating about the grander context of conflict, that's what kind of will inspire you to make a video about it?
Typically, it's just like, if I find something that I think is interesting, I was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that was something that was happening. And I find it interesting, and it doesn't seem like extreme. I try to stay away from stuff that seems really clickbaity or extreme, like extreme fringe statements. Like if it's like something that's super outlandish and wild and crazy, like unless I see a video of it or something like that, I try not to just post it right off the bat without knowing anything about it, unless it's just like, hey, I had a few other friends talking to me about it or something like that. Because there's a lot of guys out there doing the same thing I'm doing. I'm not like unique in that sense. There's a lot of folks out there that do very similar type, videos and content. They might just not have their face in it or talking about it or giving commentary on it or discussing it. They might just like post the video and then post, I guess sometimes they post, they'll credit like the person that came from, or sometimes they won't.
Right.
But, I like, if there's something I think's interesting, I try to find out as much as I can about it and, see if I can vet if it's legit or also if it's like, something that seems feasible. That's not just like wild and outlandish. I try to be careful when it comes to certain topics and subjects, just because, obviously like there's especially like the war the conflict that's kind of ongoing with Gaza and Israel and stuff like that. There's so much information that's like not necessarily credible coming out of that whole thing that unless it's like, hey, this is something that happened, here's a statement about that thing that happened, here's the video. That's one thing, but there's so much information coming out from both sides. Sometimes it gets really muddied and I can't tell like what actually happened. And so I just won't even talk about it, because it's like, well, I don't want to propagate really bad information if I don't know for sure definitively that anything like that happened, and I try to keep my opinions out of a lot of that stuff if I can. We're all going to have inherent bias, like I'm going to have inherent bias. Everyone's going to have inherent bias. Like I have friends in the Israeli Defense Force, that watch my videos and watch my content. I've interviewed a an Israeli Defense Force officer that was back here during SHOT Show before. A friend of mine, Orin Julie is her name. Big like gun content creator and stuff, like big into firearms and mental health and stuff. So I was able to interview her for my first SHOT Show back in 2024. I think it was 2024.
Very cool.
So there's always going to be inherent bias, and like I try to be careful as I can. And if something's jacked up and it comes out later that, hey, that's like that was manufactured or that was like nonsense, then and I see it like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I'll take that one down or I'll delete it or something like that. I don't want to like push bad information out there, but I try to put stuff that if there's at least like a fair amount of credible sources talking about it, then I'll usually try to talk about some stuff. The only thing that's hard is like if it's breaking, usually more than likely when it's breaking, the only people that are talking about that stuff at that particular time are like local news sources, like
that's right,
the small ones all the way down at the bottom. Cause like you're not going to have all the big mainstream media ones talking about something if it just happened, because they're pulling that information from way down at the bottom too, or local sources that are feeding it to them, but yeah, really what it comes down to is just like, if I find it interesting or fascinating, like, hey, here's some new technology that's coming out, or hey, some pro-Russian channels posted a video of a guy using an ammunition cart that has a quick release latch so that he can hop off and hop into a security position or something, like, that kind of stuff. I think it's interesting. I try not to make it controversial by saying, any outlandish statements about it one way or another. Just like, hey, here's what's happening. Here's what this is. Here's what they were posting and saying it was. And, there it is. That's cut. You don't need me. I don't need to like tell you how to feel about this,
Yeah. And I think that's one of the other things that I think the way you deliver is so refreshing, because, you're letting people make the decision on where their biases is going to lead them to, regardless. Right. And so it just, I think the more people that we can have out delivering that style of information, the better. Right. And I think, the greatest challenge in particular, as people are making this transition away from, the old guard media, whatever that is now, into this new space, is like, how do they determine, which channel to follow and why, and I think that lends itself when people can innately kind of, feel the clarity of your deliverable, then they're more that trust builds up in a quicker capacity.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing. It takes time for people to trust you, you got to earn the trust. And if you're like, if you're like, hey, we made a mistake, or if the video was, maybe you jacked up some information on it and you remove it, then it's not there anymore. And then that way people see, here's the thing, like, I'm not going to necessarily come out and say, oops, we made a mistake. I'll just take it down. I'll just immediately take that accountability, remove it, and then we'll keep pushing forward. I don't like necessarily spend a lot of time on oopsie, my bad. I'll just delete it, because it's like, nope, we're going to take care of this right now. And then we're going to move on to the next thing. Cool. And maybe that's like an aggressive approach to it, or not as nuanced of an approach, because like it might maybe to some people feel more personable if I'm like if I publicly talk about, hey, this was wrong or this wasn't right, so we deleted it. But I mean, as people stick around and they get to know me, or they watch podcasts and me talking about stuff with people's podcasts, and they can get to know that stuff from here, rather than me posting a short video that's like an apology video, which doesn't do anything anyway. Honestly, if there's something that I put up that's like incorrect or wrong, or another thing that I notice is if it's just like pure inflammatory stuff that's just like making like people get divided that happen in the nation, like I don't know, you could find plenty of topics to talk about. Then I typically just, I posted something a while back about it, and it just caused a bunch of people to start fighting, and because it was like there's some racial stuff involved with it, and it was like somebody got murdered and like that kind of thing. And I was like, you know what, this isn't really doing anything beneficial for the community of people that are engaging with my content. I'm just going to try to keep, I like to be informative and informed and teach people stuff, but I'm not trying to like rage bait people. That's not what I'm interested in. I don't want to, there's enough people out there doing that crap. I don't want to contribute to it. I am going to report and talk about certain things that may be controversial and may have some people that get upset about it, but it's not explicitly there to rage bait people. And so that's something I have had to like figure out and kind of like work through and figure out like what's the right way to approach this without feeling like I'm censoring myself or censoring my ability to communicate information. You know, it's a tough kind of dance, I guess, you know?
It's a very difficult dance because there's a certain appetite that I think people on the internet, and particular in people who want to be more informed, who are spending an exorbitant amount of time through their feed and getting captured by that rage bait stuff, and you know they're going to gravitate that towards, you know, just by the natural order of their conditioning, right, through that propaganda feed that fortifies in their consciousness, right?
Yeah.
So you know, but I also do believe that, you know, that's why your show has become so successful, is because you've been able to kind of rise through all that as you could very easily go down that road and make hardcore commentary about these different types of engagements based on your background and your familiarity with them. But you don't, you keep that restriction upon yourself, which is really kind of interesting. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this. You know, I think there's a growing, I don't know whether it's fabricated or whatever, controversy in particular on the right. I think when left has its own issues or whatever, but it's like, what is your responsibility as a creator, you know, and what is your responsibility, especially when you get to a certain level, you know, and you had talked about when you first got on, I'm not an expert in these things. I'm trying to deliver this type of factual evaluation of it for you to make your own conclusive decisions. Do you, and you talked a little bit about through the interview, but like, what can you explain deeper that level of responsibility and how it's grown in you as your audience has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger? Okay, thank you so much for listening today. Pardon the interruption, but I just got to give a shout out to one of our big sponsors here, and this comes from my good friend Alex, you know, who has a family-owned business called Firecracker Farm. When I talk about family business, and I've worked with thousands of family businesses across the country for the last 20 years of public speaking. You know, it's when I meet them and I know that this business is going to succeed and it's successful because it's a business that's a part of love and their family and how they support each other. This is that place. You know, I've been to their farm. I watch how they raise their peppers with love. I watch how they process them in this thing they call the Three Kings, and how they infuse them into this beautiful salt, this spicy salt that enhances your food. I put it on my eggs every single morning. I put it on my steak. I put it on my protein. It's in these cool salt shakers, but you know, more so that the product is impeccable. I've even been able to phase out ultra processed sauces, hot sauces, and I'm using this spicy salt. But the thing I know is just how much Alex loves doing this, how much his family loves to support him, and really the quality of the product. So if you believe me and you trust what I'm telling you, please visit firecracker.farm. And if you want a discount, you can type in the discount code RUT, R-U-T, Romeo Uniform Tango 15 to get your discount. Again, a family-owned business that's incredible. You will love their product, I promise you. That's firecracker.farm.
Well, I've definitely become more self-aware of biases I have. You know, that's one thing. I've become very self-aware of it. And I've gotten called out for being biased for certain things in certain posts, even if it wasn't like overtly biased. Maybe it was just like slightly biased, or maybe I put in some wording that seemed like I was for or against something. And, you know, I'm going to have biases. And sometimes I'm going to post about things and say like, I feel a certain way about it, or that I feel like this is the reason why this is happening, or this is the reason why they are doing this thing or whatever. And but at the same time, I also try to put it out there because I don't want to like tell people how to think or how to feel about stuff. Like I have my own opinions about things, and like, I'm sure there's probably people out there that think I'm alt-right. There's also probably people out there that think I'm a liberal, but they don't know because I don't talk about that stuff. You know what I mean? Like I'm a registered independent for a reason. You know what I mean? Like I've been a registered independent for years now because I believe in liberty, but I also want people to make up their own mind, and I believe in like freedom, and I don't want to I've never done ads for any political action committee, and I won't ever, because like that's something I want to stay very far away from and removed from. And I, want to, I want people to feel like at the end of the day, one of the biggest things I've noticed, especially with social media, is that like a lot of these echo chambers have formed like along party lines in all kinds of ways. And what ends up happening is like these pages that are very big pages across social media will post stuff that is obviously appealing to a specific type of individual. And it's designed to get people mad and comment and say something because they're angry, or because they're like, or because it makes them feel a certain way, or it evokes certain emotions that cause them to want to engage with it.
That trigger.
Yeah, it's like a trick, right? And obviously, like I would say probably older folks are probably more likely to fall for that one because it's still relatively new, and they have like social media hasn't been around their whole life like a lot of Gen Zers. By the time Gen Zers are in their 60s and retirement age, they'll have had social media their whole life.
That's right.
And they'll know how to deal with this stuff. But although there's probably going to be other challenges by then with AI and everything. But, I think one of the biggest problems is that like there's a lot of people that are just posting stuff that doesn't do anything to bring people together. Because at the end of the day, like we're all Americans first. And I feel like we need more stuff that's just like, hey, this is what's happening. This is something that's taking place. Here's what's in this bill. Here's what's in this statement from this department. Here's what they said. Here's what they're doing. Here's what your Congress is voting on right now. Here's what's in the package. Here's what's in the one big beautiful bill. Oh, it's 1,000 pages. Well, here's something that the left is going to really like that's in the bill. Okay, here's something that the right's going to really like in this bill, or whatever. Like here's just what it is. Here's what the wording is. Like, you can decide for yourself. I don't want people to think that my page is a right-wing media page or a left-wing media page. I want them to think like, hey, this is a guy that just talks about current events, current affairs, military stuff, technology, science, things that are happening. It's interesting, and we can all kind of be here. The problem is I notice no matter what it is, if it's been politicized in some way, people fight in the comments. And it's not like I'm asking for that. I don't want that to happen. I'm not posting it because I want people to argue in the comments with each other. I'm posting it because it's just like, this is something I found interesting that's new or has come out recently. But you can't do once your media grows to a certain level, it becomes totally unmanageable for one person to go in there and like clean your comment section up. You can't do it. It's impossible. And honestly, like for my own mental sanity, I spend less time in the comments than ever before because I'm a habitual Joe Rogan listener. Like I really like the things that he does and the people he has on that he talks to. I think he's a very reasonable guy, like straight, like center of the road. I think most Americans are probably in the center.
Agreed.
I genuinely believe that. And that the only reason why it seems like we're super divided is because the people that are the loudest on the right and the loudest on the left are super, super loud and get like magnified because it's so outlandish. I think most people are in the center, and I think most people like want everybody to be able to like have enough like money to feed your family, have a nice, like a house with a roof over your head, have a good, steady paying job, like have enough time to like take vacations, not have food insecurity. I want to see everybody in the country be able to have some level of success. And I still feel like this is still like the land of where you can actually pursue happiness, where you have the freedom to pursue happiness, not the freedom to like be given happiness. It's not something you're entitled to, but you're free to pursue whatever you want and like worship whatever God of your understanding you want, and live your life as you see fit, as long as you're not having a negative impact on somebody else physically, right? Mentally, maybe that's going to happen, but that's like, okay, like as long as you're not like guilty of some sort of crime, but that's a whole other thing too. It's like, you see a lot of politicization of legal stuff right now. And it's like, man, that makes the water super muddy too. And it's like, I'm not a lawyer. Like, I don't understand how that stuff works, man. It's like, that's why I just try to keep it clean and straight, simple. Like, hey, this is what's happening. This is what I'm seeing. You can decide this is what the wording is in this statement this person said or whatever. Like, you can decide how you feel about it, and here it is,
Well, Kagan, I just can't thank you enough for the focus that you have in doing that, and in your delivery, and having that type of personal responsibility to believe that that's the way, that's such a benefit to the society right now. Because as you said, those people that are screaming at the top of their lungs, man, they're getting a lot of traction, and those bot farms that we talked about before coming on are increasing their capabilities. They're driving more diversity or not diversity, but divisiveness within the American public. And I too agree that, hey man, the best thing we can do right now is find that common ground on the information.
We gotta find that common ground, man. That's the real problem. It's like, dude, I guarantee you could take 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans, put them in the room, and they would all be able to find something in common with each other, and like we should all we should all root for the success of the nation, no matter who's in power, no matter who's running what, no matter who's in charge of what. We should all be like, well, I want this to win. I want to see the American people succeed, and I want people to be able to have more money to spend on their kids and like have some semblance of happiness and, that kind of stuff, man.
Amen. All right, brother. Thank you so much for your time and for what you're doing. Is there any, where can people find you, follow you if they haven't already? And then obviously, what do you have anything kind of cool or unique coming up? Are there any veterans charities you're working with or groups that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so, I mean, if anybody wants to find me, you can just type Kagan Dunlap on pretty much any social platform. And I mean, it's my first name and last name, or you can Google me. If you type in my name in Google, Kagan, Kagan, last name Dunlap, Dunlap, then all of my social media will pop up there, and you can just find it on there. It's easy to find. As far as veteran charities, so there's a couple of great organizations. Like this shirt that I'm wearing right now is from a organization called Operation Allies Refuge Foundation. And we actually just did a big roundtable discussion video that we posted on YouTube together. It was a pretty big event we did, and we recorded it in Quantico. I would say about a month ago, maybe. It was like at the beginning. I think it was the very beginning of April. I went up there on a weekend on a Friday, and they had 3 Vietnam vets that helped evacuate Saigon, the Saigon embassy and one of the consulates. And then 3 Hamid Karzai International Airport veterans who were in the Marine Corps that helped evacuate the airport there in 2021. And we brought the 3 or the 6 of them together, 2 different generations that had both evacuated a country. And they had a roundtable discussion. I just kind of sat there as like a mediator and asked questions if things came up. And we also did with like the organization, they did one-on-one interviews for every single one of these people. And that way they could kind of like tell their story about what their experiences were. And then we put together all of this footage into a big YouTube video. It's on my YouTube channel right now, which, if we can get this thing move, and it was posted on the anniversary of the evacuation of Saigon on the 30th of April. And basically any of the money that's generated from this thing in revenue is going to go back to that foundation. And then also there's like fundraising links in the in the comment for it, and also in the description for the video. But they're a great organization. They do a lot to help folks that served in Afghanistan during the evacuation, like to heal from moral injury, and to bring people together and help people in the GWAT community that have a lot of moral injury from that whole thing, and so that's a good organization. I'm sure you know who Hunter 7 is, probably Hunter 7 Foundation. Chelsea's a good friend of mine, and her husband as well. They're all great people. They've done an immense amount to help out veterans and folks in the first responder community and police and all that stuff. Like, they've done free cancer screenings for thousands of people. Each cancer screening costs I think $1,200 to $1,500 per cancer screening, and they do free cancer screenings to people all over the place all the time.
Wow.
At SHOT Show, they screened I think over 100 people or something crazy like that for free. And they really do help a lot of people in the veteran community get screened, and they do a lot for cancer research for exposure related illnesses. Check them out, Hunter 7 Foundation. They're great. They're great people. And there's tons of others too. There's tons of another good one. A friend of mine I went to college with, called Jets for Vets. And they basically fly junior service members home for free from their duty station right now overseas, for seeing family. Cause if you're a junior enlisted service member, it's expensive to pay for tickets coming home. I only went home 3 times the 5 years I was stationed in Hawaii, because it's $1,000 round trip to fly back to the East Coast. And so I was like, I'm just not going to go home. Most people can't afford it.
No.
If you're a PFC and you're making $600, $700 every 2 weeks, you're not going to be able to afford $1,000, round trip flight. You barely afford anything. So they do a really good job too. But there's tons of good organizations. I could go on and on. I'm friends with a lot of folks that run nonprofits, and I love everything that they're doing. And that's one of the things I'd like to get more heavily involved in once I can get, because I'm still trying to build my business and my brand to a point where, if I can get to a point where I can just give away thousands of dollars a month of my own money, I want to do that. That's where I'm working towards. And you have to build something that's profitable to get to a point where you can do that. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think, oh, well, this person's just making all this money and they're keeping it all for themselves. Bro, how do you think Black Rifle Coffee got so successful? You think they just got that successful just giving everything away they made? No, they had to roll it back into the company until they grew big enough where now they give hundreds of thousands of dollars away to tons of veteran charity organizations. And that's what I want to get to be able to do eventually, because I want to have an impact on people and I want to help people. That's really what it comes down to, because we do a really good job of tearing each other down. We also do a really good job of helping each other up when we're having a hard time, and I feel like we have an obligation as service members, military members, veterans, first responders, of doing the right thing, taking care of each other, being good ambassadors for our community. Because, the people to our left and our right, whether they're still in or out, deserve that, And so that's what I hope that happens. I hope more people do that. Maybe they see what I'm doing and maybe they're like, okay, maybe I should try to do something more myself. I don't know if I'm the best role model. I definitely don't think so. I'm just trying to do the best I can, like everybody else out there, like you, like everybody that's out here trying to do something to put out a good message or talk through things or have good, honest, open dialogue about stuff and raising awareness about good organizations that are doing good things for other people in the community, So I don't know. I start rambling, I think probably, but I lose track of what I'm saying sometimes, but
I tell you what, those are the best rambles that you just had ever, man. I wish you all the best. God bless you, Kagan, and keep up the outstanding work, man. Stay safe too, please.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on again, man. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Absolutely.